a path to destiny. The journey west was more than a mere migration. It was a test of endurance, a gamble with fate, and a leap into the unknown. For thousands of pioneers, the Oregon Trail was a lifeline to a dream, stretching over 2,000 miles through an untamed wilderness where survival was never guaranteed. Families packed their entire lives into wooden wagons, leaving behind the familiar for the promise of something greater. Some would make it, others would not. But all who embarked on the trail would forever be changed. The Oregon Trail, a journey into the unknown. The year was 1843, and the promise of a better life lay beyond the horizon. Families packed their belongings into wooden wagons, their oxen tethered, their hearts filled with both hope and trepidation. The Oregon Trail, an unbroken path stretching 2,000 miles from Independence, Missouri, to the verdant valleys of Oregon, beckoned those bold enough to chase the American dream. This was no ordinary journey. It was an odyssey through a vast and untamed land, where nature's beauty was matched only by its unforgiving challenges. The first steps led travelers through the rolling prairie grasslands of present-day Kansas and Nebraska, where the Platte River carved its way through the open expanse. The sky stretched endlessly above, a canvas of brilliant blues by day and an ocean of stars by night. But the prairie, while seemingly gentle, held dangers of its own: sudden storms, swollen rivers, and the ever-present risk of stampedes from startled bison herds. As the wagons pressed westward, the land began to change. The North Platte River guided them through increasingly arid lands into the rugged territory of what is now Wyoming. Here the real test of endurance began. The first mountain ranges loomed ahead, forcing pioneers to leave the safety of the river and confront the merciless Great Divide Basin. The sun blazed overhead, water grew scarce, and exhaustion threatened to break even the strongest spirits. Yet they trudged on, drawn by the vision of a new beginning. Southwestern Wyoming gave way to the Snake River Plain in present-day Idaho, offering a brief respite with its flatter lands, but the challenges were far from over. The Blue Mountains of Oregon rose like an insurmountable barrier, demanding one final act of perseverance. Wagons creaked under the strain, and weary travelers pushed forward, knowing that beyond these peaks lay the promised land. At last the Columbia River Valley came into view. For many this was the final leg of the journey. Before 1846, pioneers would navigate the river's treacherous currents, but with the opening of the Barlow Road, an overland route through the Cascade Range, settlers could now travel directly into the fertile Willamette Valley. There the dream of Oregon became reality: lush farmland, rich forests, and a future shaped by those who had braved the trail. The Oregon Trail was more than a route. It was a symbol of resilience, ambition, and the unyielding spirit of those who sought a better life. Though many perished along the way, claimed by disease, accidents, or the sheer brutality of the land, those who survived carved a new chapter in America's story. Their footprints may have faded, but their legacy endures in the land they settled and the trails they blazed. Early trailblazers. Long before the wagon trains, the trail was but a whisper in the wilderness, traced by the footsteps of trappers, fur traders, and missionaries. Between 1811 and 1840, these rugged pioneers braved the unknown, traveling on foot and horseback through lands untouched by European settlement. Until the trail's transformation into a wagon route, those in the east dreaming of Oregon or California had but one alternative: a perilous sea voyage around the southern tip of South America, a grueling journey that could last nearly a year. One of the earliest explorers of the West was the French-Canadian trapper Toussaint Charbonneau and his Shoshone wife, Sacagawea. Their invaluable guidance during the Lewis and Clark expedition 1804-06 helped map and document the vast, uncharted lands that now lay within the young United States following the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. In 1810, the ambitious fur trader John Jacob Astor sought to stake his claim in the Oregon wilderness. He dispatched an expedition westward to establish a trading post for his American Fur Company. Braving the Missouri River's wild currents, these frontiersmen pressed on through the plains, over the mountains of Wyoming and Idaho, and into Oregon. There, in 1812, they founded Fort Astoria, the first American-owned settlement on the Pacific coast. Astor's dream of a fur trade empire was short-lived, however, as British forces seized the fort during the War of 1812, forcing him to sell his operations to the Northwest Company. One silver lining emerged from Astor's ill-fated endeavor: an unexpected discovery. In 1812, as members of his expedition struggled eastward, Robert Stewart and his companions stumbled upon the South Pass in southwestern Wyoming. This 20-mile (32 kilometers) gap in the Rocky Mountains would later prove to be the key to westward migration. Unlike the treacherous terrain that had plagued earlier explorers, the South Pass offered a gentler, more accessible route across the Continental Divide. Yet, despite Stewart's reports, the pass remained largely forgotten, overshadowed by the prevailing belief that the West was a barren wasteland. For years, the so-called Great American Desert, as it had been dubbed by explorers like Zebulon Pike and Stephen H. Long, discouraged settlement. It was not until 1824, when trappers Jedediah Smith and Thomas Fitzpatrick rediscovered the South Pass, that the floodgates of migration finally opened. This critical passageway would soon become the lifeline of the Oregon Trail, guiding thousands of pioneers toward their destiny in the West. ##### missionaries, Mormons and others. As news of the Oregon Trail spread, missionaries sought to bring religion to the untamed frontier. In 1834, Jason Lee led the first missionary group westward, traveling with a merchant expedition led by Nathaniel Wyeth. Their journey followed the Platte River, and along the Snake River, Wyeth established Fort Hall, later purchased by the Hudson's Bay Company, becoming a vital resupply station for future emigrants. Among the most notable missionaries was Marcus Whitman, a physician and congregational preacher. In the mid-1830s, he and Henry Harmon Spalding established missions in the Oregon country, Whitman among the Cayuse at Waylatpo and Spalding among the Nez Perce at Lapwai. Accompanied by their wives, Narcissa Whitman and Eliza Spalding, these women became the first white women to cross the South Pass. Whitman's work inspired growing interest in Oregon. In 1842, he journeyed 3,000 miles back east to rally support for settlement. His message, coupled with explorer John C. Fremont's glowing reports of the West, fueled the migration wave. By 1843, nearly 1,000 settlers, the Great Migration, ventured westward, cementing the Oregon Trail's role in American expansion. Not all pioneers sought Oregon. Following the murder of their leader Joseph Smith in 1844, the Mormons, led by Brigham Young, embarked on their own journey. Fleeing persecution, they followed the Oregon Trail before veering south toward the Great Salt Lake, establishing what would become Salt Lake City. Though the Oregon Trail symbolized opportunity, it also bore the scars of conflict. In 1847, the Cayuse, devastated by measles brought by settlers, massacred Whitman and others at his mission, igniting the Cayuse War. Despite such tragedies, the trail endured as a conduit of hope, drawing thousands westward in pursuit of a new beginning.